Hello everyone and welcome to episode 8 of the ITSM crowd. These are the regular chats that we have with members of ITSM Zone's team mentor, where we look at topics related to service management or tangential to service management. Today's topic is Day of the DevOps. So DevOps is a real buzzword at the moment. Everybody's talking about it. So we thought we'd take a little bit of time to dissect what DevOps is, where it's come from, and what it means for organizations. So the first thing I'm going to do is ask our mentors to introduce themselves. So we'll go from right to left on my screen. So Suresh, if you want to introduce yourself first, please.
Thanks, Claire. It's good to be back here. So my name is Suresh GP. I'm based out of India and currently Managing Director of Top Solutions. And I enjoy these conversations. There's a lot to discuss, and we have some eminent experts here. So would be interesting to discuss what is their perspectives in the whole perspective of DevOps. And it's not really a fact. It's something really getting more real. So we want to really see what is happening across in this context. So nice to chat again.
Thanks for joining us. Stuart, if you want to say hello.
I certainly do. Hello, everyone. My name's Stuart Rance. I'm a consultant, a trainer, and an author. I do IT service management, and I do security and cyber resilience. And I'm going to have an interesting chat about DevOps, and I'm looking forward to it.
Thank you, Stuart. And last but by no means least, we've got Daniel.
Hello, my name is Daniel Breston, and I'm a bit of a lean and ITSM geek, which falls very nicely into my favorite subject, DevOps. And I'm Chief of DevOps for Ranger 4, a DevOps consulting firm, and also a proud mentor of the ITSM crowd.
Fantastic, thank you very much. And yeah, I think the fact that we've got a Chief of DevOps here today on this hangout means we're going to have a good conversation. My name's Claire Agata. I'm the lead tutor for ITSM Zone. So part of my role is to keep an eye on what's going on in the service management industry, and we have recently launched the DevOps Foundation course in partnership with the DevOps Institute, because we can see that there is, as Suresh said, a real groundswell and a real passion about DevOps that's developing out there. If you've got any questions that you would like us to answer, or if you'd like us to talk about any topics, if you use the hashtag ITSM crowd on Twitter, we'll be following that, so we'll pick up those questions during the hangout if you've got anything that you particularly want us to cover. We're going to start with a definition, because DevOps means different things to different people. So the first question that I'm going to put to our mentors is, what is DevOps?
I'll start. DevOps to me is from idea until the customer has it, and we understand whether or not the customer likes what we provided them, such that we can improve it. So it's how do we get that flow to the customer as quickly as possible, no more 9 to 10 months or 1 year releases. How do we get that feedback all along the route as to what we're doing and how are we doing and is it right, so that there's no defects being introduced into the environment. And then how do we improve that whole entire chain and whatever we're giving to the customer as quickly as possible. So it really is a mix of agile and customer relationship management and development and everything else all into one. Idea to ka-ching.
So I probably take the definition, which is really a cultural movement, right? I mean, it's really a cultural and professional movement that stresses communication, collaboration, integration between let's say, the software developers and the IT operations. So I think all along we have been going on a journey of being in silos, like application development teams and operational teams. And like the right hand did not know what was the left hand doing. I think it's now very imperative, as Daniel pointed out, that the customer cannot keep on waiting, and you need to be agile, we need to be quick, and we need to really address what is really needed. So I think that is how we look at the whole thing. So it's more of a cultural and a professional movement that stresses communication, collaboration, and integration between both these teams. That's how I look at DevOps.
I think it's what both of you have said, but it's also much wider than that. I like what you say about it being cultural, collaboration, communication. I love Daniel introducing the word flow, which I think is really important. But for me, the worst thing about DevOps is the name. It's not about development and operations. It's about customers, IT, suppliers. If the collaboration doesn't extend beyond dev and ops to customers, to information security, to supplier management, to everything else that you do in order to satisfy the people who are somewhere out there providing the money that's driving the whole engine, then it's badly broken. I wished it could have had a better name than DevOps, but hey, we're stuck with that one now.
Yeah, you're right, Stuart. And I think if you look online, you'll see people talking about biz DevOps and the fact that the S in DevOps should stand for security, so it's DevOps Sec. And you are absolutely right. It does include everything. But I guess, like you say, DevOps, it's almost an umbrella term because companies have been looking at lean IT, they've been looking at agile, they've been looking at Kanban, while still doing all the traditional IT service management. And I think maybe DevOps is a way to just pull some of those practices together in a way that organisations can understand. Now, I was at the DevOps Summit in San Francisco a couple of weeks ago, and was very privileged to see a lot of incredibly motivated people talking about what they were doing with DevOps in their organisation, and all the presentations are online, the videos are online, so if you have time I do recommend that you search on the DevOps Summit and take a look at some of those. But one thing that I noticed maybe more as a service management person is there seemed to be a lot more of the dev side than the ops side. Do you think it's true that maybe dev is driving DevOps at the moment?
I think it depends on who you're talking to. We're seeing operations trying to drive it. And drive's not the right word. We're seeing operations trying to get involved via the introduction of automation of environments or scripting of server, network storage, the whole security, the whole bit, so that developers can create their own environments. But we're also seeing where developers and operations are working together from the first time that an idea is presented as to creating that acceptance criteria, which can then be constantly tested against as it's created. So I don't even want to use the word develop, but as it's created and given to the customer. And now it's given to the customer by all parties, as Stuart said. So it's given by the supply, the whole supply chain is involved in this. So I don't think it's being driven by any particular group anymore, or at least I hope not.
It's interesting. I do see that the people who evangelize most about DevOps do tend to have a very development focus, and there's nothing wrong with that. They tend to be the very fast-moving 500,000 deployments a minute style organizations. What I find really interesting about DevOps is because it's not a single well-defined thing, and because it is more about a set of attitudes and culture and behavior and collaboration, most of the things that DevOps talks about are applicable to any IT organization, however old-fashioned they are, however rapidly they need to deploy. Some of the things that some people think are absolutely essential for DevOps are only suitable for places that want to do rapid deployments. But I think you can do a lot of what DevOps talks about. I was working recently with a very, very old-fashioned organization in the sort of the manufacturing and retail type space, making bits of metal that they mill out and sell to plumbers, and they weren't after doing thousands of deployments a day. They just needed to run their business. But there's a lot in DevOps that they could use to reduce cost, increase value, get better focus, get better alignment, not so much between IT and the business as between everybody and the customers that are paying.
Hmm.
I think I will take another approach as to what I look at DevOps. Now, if you look at how ITIL emerged as a framework, initially there was a lot of questions of how do you really define a framework and what are the kind of process, the skeleton of the ecosystem. Now, that's the same phase DevOps is. Now, DevOps is actually getting groomed by different people in the world. They want to evangelize the whole concept, right? So if it's a dev guy, he takes from his own approach of waterfall method towards agile and sprints and scrum and stuff like that, right? The operations guys try to get their version of story for the DevOps journey. So I think as people who are involved in the aspect of DevOps, they take their own story ahead. So there's no right answers, there's no wrong answers, and just people are just having a lot of views coming across, and that's a gradual evolution that will happen. So at this time, we're just in a kind of a mode of exploring all of the options. Whichever looks good, we adopt that, which is a good sign, which is a normal sign of any evolution that I think about.
I do see plenty of IT organizations introducing Agile into their operations rather than into their development, improving the collaboration between those now Agile operations and their development and security and business people. And for me, that's DevOps. It might not have the entire set of tools and engineering for rapid deployment, but I think it's a major step forwards in how my customers are operating.
I think, and that's a good point. I think the group that's always gets left behind and shouldn't be is that senior management, either the business or the financial, the CFO or the COO, or hopefully even the CIO, but they're all looking at how do we go and get things done better, faster, safer, and ultimately cost less. And oh, look, there's this new thing called DevOps. Let's go have a look at that, because Agile maybe didn't give us everything that we wanted, or IT service management didn't give us everything that we wanted. So let's see if DevOps can help us.
And the problem that I have is when I talk with customers, the customers say that, okay, I heard that there are a lot of tools that will help us in a DevOps journey. So can we get a puppet? Can we get these tools and that tools to come up and do that? Now the question is, people want a magic wand, and that's where people say that ITIL did not work. Probably DevOps works, and let's be an early adopter. So I think the aspect of deciphering some of these myths is a challenge by itself, and it requires collective awareness from people and experts to do that.
Well, one of the things DevOps does do is introduce much more automation, and whilst I tend to avoid talking about tools generally, I think the concept of automating everything that you practically can is of huge value. And I have some customers with quite high security requirements, and their kind of initial prejudice is that DevOps can't be for them because that's more anarchic and it won't lock things down. Actually, it's exactly the opposite of truth. If for example, you're doing infrastructure as code, where all of your configuration information is maintained in exactly the same way as all of your other code, then when the auditors come and say, can you prove to me how your environment was configured on the 14th of February at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, then they absolutely can. I think it's fantastic for highly secure environments, that level of automation. So yeah, I usually not people who focus on tools, but I have a huge amount of time for the automation that comes with DevOps.
Yeah, and I think in a way, organisations that are looking at DevOps can learn a lot from how ITIL and how IT service management's been done in the past. Like Suresh said, there's this temptation to jump straight to tools. Yes, tools can deliver immense value, but a tool is not a one-stop shop. If you're going to automate, you need to understand what you're automating, you need to simplify it, you need to understand if it's possible to automate it. So I think there's real lessons to be learned, and it's really important to me that DevOps doesn't become the next silver bullet. And I've already heard about a couple of organisations in Australia that got rid of their ITIL structure, their ITIL processes, their ITIL teams, and everybody got a brand new DevOps job title. And that it's not the way to do it. And I think there's a lot in DevOps about doing small things iteratively, getting feedback, making incremental improvements, and that kind of thinking applies to our processes and our capabilities just as much as it does to the products and the services that we're delivering. This concept of agile service management, ING Bank, they were at the DevOps Summit and they presented on their agile service management that they've introduced, and that was very, very interesting. They've got rid of some traditional service management elements because they weren't necessary anymore, but they hadn't just thrown all the process out the window. So one of the examples that they gave was they've got the business working with them every day now. They've got the business within their Scrum teams, within their sprints, and because the business is working with them, they've actually got rid of a lot of the service level agreements because they don't need to report. The business knows what's happening and knows what's being done to address anything that's going wrong. So yeah, I mean there's a lot going around on social media, and it's kind of a clickbait title, DevOps, it's the death of ITIL. What do you think about that kind of view?
Go on, Suresh.
No, I was just telling that I couldn't resist. Now, one of the things is I think we should be very clear is what are we trying to achieve? I think if that you asked the question correctly, then what you have done so far has worked for so many years, right? So there's something that we need to probably adapt and adopt. So probably that's how we need to look at it, as opposed to just looking at, okay, this is not working anymore and DevOps. So answering what are we trying to achieve, what is the customer asking, and how can we deliver value from what we are doing today. So just doing that step approach, then take the call as to what will fit in, right? So the basic things, use the as state, look at what the customer is asking, what is the current thing delivering value. So I think the concept of value chain, looking at that is so powerful, as opposed to just looking at in a whole block of ITIL did not work, so we'll have DevOps or SIAM or something like that. That's something which is I couldn't resist. Sometimes it's overwhelming. So much times we spend time to educate and make them aware. That's something it doesn't get anywhere else.
There is, though, a very broken model of what ITIL means, which isn't in any of the books, but sadly exists in a number of organizations as a kind of a bureaucratic, any change you want to make has to go to a meeting which will be on Tuesday week, and then we'll maybe think about it and maybe we'll let you make your change a month. This is terrible stuff. And I know that the ITIL books don't say to do that, but in some organizations, in many organizations, a culture has built up around treating ITIL as something it's not. And I think DevOps actually is a great way of trying to break some of that down, and I don't have a problem with that. I think throwing away something like change management altogether would be a mistake, but I do think a lot of what many organizations do with change management is terrible, and bringing DevOps, collaborative, flow, make it just work, stop wasting my time stuff to bear is ideal. And I can do that while still following exactly what's written in ITIL Service Transition by increasing the number of standard changes, by delegating change authority to where it belongs, and just by becoming slick and efficient and effective. It doesn't mean I don't need change management. It means I need to do it properly.
I think there was a really good example where somebody stood up at a big lean conference with the ITIL Service Transition book in his hand. And he was the head of a major, or he was the head of testing for a major organization. And he went, this is what's allowing us to do a release every, and he quoted this amazing number, into production. How many of you are doing that? And the audience was stunned because he still had the service transition book in his hand. And he looked at the book and he went, there's no way that in second 1 through 5 we could get the business case written and agreed, and in seconds 6 through 7 or 8 we could get it developed such that in seconds 8, 9, and 10 we could get it QA'd and performance assessed, and then in second 11 release it. But the flow of doing that, what Stuart said, the flow of doing that is there. And if you wanted to improve what you were doing, I think DevOps, for whatever reason, is allowing people to start asking the question, why? Why are we doing it this way? And how can we get rid of some of these manual steps and get people back to doing what they're supposed to be doing, which is innovating for us so that we can make money or attract customers or make things better?
I must tell you a story about one of my customers who has an incredibly low rate of change because that's what their business needs. They only allow IT changes to the manufacturing side of their business during the 1 week in the year when the manufacturing plant is shut down and changes are allowed to the actual manufacturing hardware. They don't allow IT changes the rest of the time because that IT is effectively part of a manufacturing operation. So their change cadence is during 1 week in the year we make changes. There's nothing wrong with that if it's suitable for the business, but I tell you what, they don't half need to automate, they don't half need to get the flow right, they don't half need to know that in that week the 3,000 planned changes are going to go in slick.
I think the other thing is, and this is where Mr. Governance might want to pop in, is it allows us to create indicators of performance that are key to the business that IT can then map what they're doing against. So we're not going to, we did 100 changes this month. It's, we did 100 changes this month and it helped the business achieve a goal or remove an obstacle. And it's that type of alignment that I think DevOps is also bringing into the organization, of trying to keep it structured, but still trying to keep it, you know, safe and aligned.
Yeah, I would agree with whatever both Stuart and Daniel said. I mean, I think that's the way to look at the flow, the value, and see what we're trying to achieve. Yeah.
There's another important DevOps idea that we haven't mentioned. Well, actually, Claire mentioned it in passing earlier, and then we didn't pick up on it. And that's this idea of experiment, fast feedback, learning, and improving. And I love it. I think it's exactly the way to progress in service management, in operations, in development, in most things that we do. But a lot of people misunderstand what experiment means, and I think it means make random anarchic changes and see what happens. The word experiment comes from science, and it means form a hypothesis and then check whether your hypothesis is true. So not some random change, but I came across a lovely example of it actually, and I can't remember who this was from. It's certainly not me, but I loved it. If you drive to work every day and you always go on the same route, maybe some other route's faster. Could be, couldn't it? So have a look at the map, think about what route might be faster, and then try it one day. And if it is, change your route. And if it isn't, well, go back to the first one. And I thought, what a great example of hypothesis, experiment, fast feedback, and learning.
They do every now and then in the UK we have a tube strike in London, which means most of London can't get to work and people have to walk or cycle or skateboard. And I did read something that said after a tube strike there is a percentage of passengers that disappear because they've tried this new route and they've found out that it works. So yeah, it's you're absolutely right, Stuart. It's not experimenting, let's be crazy and press these buttons and see what happens. But it is about asking the question, can we do this better? And testing to see if we can do it better. So everyone said culture, and to me a massive part of DevOps is the culture. It's about sharing, so it's moving away from this idea of this is my knowledge and it's my power. It's about small, self-adaptive, self-managing teams, and it's also about a blame-free culture. So it's liberating people to let them make mistakes and to let them experiment, and to know that that creates knowledge rather than creates finger pointing. I guess the question is, how big a change is this going to be for a lot of organisations to move to this type of culture?
Massive. Absolutely massive. Because the first thing is you can't have senior management go, okay, create a program, go do DevOps. They need to get out there and they need to do DevOps with everybody. You do DevOps with people. You do DevOps with your business and with your suppliers and with everyone involved. And you help coach them on better, faster, safer. And how to change the way that they think and change the way that they work and collaborate and communicate. So instead of spending 80% of your time in a meeting or looking at email, what would happen if you spent 80% of your time out with your senior stakeholders or out with your teams, getting them aligned and focused to use technology, the people, the processes, and all the fun stuff to really enable what the business is doing. So to me, it's a massive organizational change in how people interact, and then use autonomy to do their work for the business.
There's no doubt about organizational change management coming into place. I think we did an exercise for a large enterprise which was following a traditional waterfall method, and they wanted to adopt or move towards the DevOps area. So one of the things that we first wanted to tell them was, what are we doing now and what will change? And just because you're making a change, what will happen to the way that they're doing today? So I think everybody asked this question is, what is in for me? What is going to be changed and why are we making this change? Most of the organizations fail to communicate this message clearly, and then they start stacking up a lot of these communications plans and transition plans and other stuff, big things that's useless if you don't really get to the basic structure, because people go through this emotional cycle and we seldom take it for, we really take it for granted. And I think I cannot overemphasize that we should run programs which are designed in a way that it cater to a particular set of segments, like for a service desk or the application teams or the operations teams. So I think it's more than just communication. It's just getting their buy-in and participativeness that is quite critical for success of any program for that matter.
And I think that's a really important point for any organisation that's thinking about starting with DevOps, starting on a small scale or a large scale, is understand why you're doing it and understand maybe why what you've got at the moment isn't meeting customer requirements, because the worst thing to do is to do DevOps because it's cool, like ITIL was cool or COVID was cool. Do this because it's going to deliver value and you can see where it's going to deliver value. Don't do it because it's the latest thing and you think it might work. Like Daniel said, it needs that buy-in at every level of the organisation and from every stakeholder as well. So to kind of wrap us up, top tips. We always like to finish with top tips. So if you can just share with me a few of your top tips for an organisation that's looking at DevOps at the moment. We'll start with you, Daniel.
Spend half a day with a group of individuals and a bunch of Post-it notes and just answer the question, what does good look like? What does good DevOps look like? What is the problem we're trying to solve really? How will we know that we're on the right course and that we're staying the right course? How do we know that we have the right people involved? Don't look at your current tools. Don't look at your current IT service management processes. Don't worry about Agile and all the other stuff. Just answer the question, what does good look like? Suresh, Stuart?
Stuart, close.
So for me, the most important thing for organizations to do if they want to get some value out of DevOps ideas is to start collaborating. Start getting people to get outside of their own teams. Start getting people to work in cross-functional teams. Sadly, I think that by the time DevOps has been broadened out to a significant number of organizations, it's likely to have lost 90% of its value, in the same way as every other thing that I've seen start from a passionate core of people who know what they're talking about, and once it's spread out to a larger group of people who'd never really understood it in the first place, I think there's a huge danger in it becoming a tools and rapid deployment play. If you get one thing out of DevOps, it will be collaboration across, between, and within teams.
Yeah, I would just build upon that in terms of what if happens if you have all these departments come here, but then there is one message that we want to ask them. What is the best thing that you have done in your department that you're proud of, that you could share with this team? And then list it down on a corner of a flip chart. And if you have got 10 ideas from 10 different departments, and put it across into that and say, guys, if this department has got benefit of this particular action, can we leverage that best practice? Because what happens is success breeds further success. And that's an easier way to get these people, get excited about it. Rather than just coming with the theory of what we can do and other stuff, get something which they are more proud of. And then take those learnings that they've already brought in and say, guys, let's make this cascaded across the organization. That becomes a lot more empowering, and as well as people feel a part of the whole initiative. That's how I would probably turn it a little different from all the sage advice that both Daniel and Stuart have given already.
It's classic organization change management, isn't it? You create a sense of urgency, you work out what's in it for me, for all the participants, you communicate.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah, and I do love how in this amazing technical world that we live in, the top tools for DevOps are going to be Post-it notes and flip charts. That's fantastic.
It's all about people. I think the relationship factor, is getting. And if you look at that, it's just not about that. You see, business relationship management is a big course. I was told that there is about 46 countries that have got subscribed to BRM. So you see, it's all getting more and more about people, about relationships, about being together. And even though this technology and other stuff things, and that's what the classy note that I got when I spoke with Ken Wendell in Fusion, the social media is making people who are farther, who are distant, closer, and who are closer, farther apart. And that's the reality of the situation. With our own closed ones, we are not speaking with them. And with people across the globe, we are able to connect through all of these social media. So it's all about people that's making the whole impact.
Yeah, I think that's very true. And visualization of what we do, visualization of work is so much more important now, and that's where the Kanban boards, the post-it notes and the flip charts come in, because we need to see what we're doing, we need to see the problems, we need to see the constraints, we need to see the work in progress, and you can't do that in a document, or it's much more difficult. So communication tools, that's what we're talking about essentially. So some absolutely fantastic insights tonight. I think this has been a brilliant episode. So huge thank you to Suresh, to Stuart and to Daniel for joining us, and we will see you all on the next episode of the ITSM Crowd. Bye everyone.
Thanks for arranging, Claire.
Goodbye. Hope to see lots of you at the UK ITSMF conference in a few days.
Hopefully you will.
Bye.